NEK-TV Rocks, and my guests today are
Jim Lengel from Lake Elmore.
JoAnn Makowski from the Greensboro Association, Lake Caspian.
Okay, welcome. And we're going to be talking about wake boats. What's a wake boat?
A wake boat is a big, powerful boat that makes a huge rooster tail wake behind it that people can surf on as if they were on the ocean. So you've seen the ocean waves with the big curling surf.
Oh, yeah.
And the guy surfing inside. That's what these boats do. They make an artificial ocean wave that people can
on
surf
our little old lakes.
Anywhere that you can get this thing going up to 10 miles an hour, you can make a wave and surf on it. Yep, it's a new technology.
That's a lot of money, right?
$150,000, $200,000.
A little bit of money.
And I know that we on Lake Memphremagog, and obviously we're recording this in Newport, and we're right on Lake Memphremagog. We do have these boats. Do you have them on the lakes where you live?
We have one wake boat on Lake Elmore, but he doesn't know that he can wake surf. He bought this boat not understanding, he just bought a boat. And he comes up but once a year and just makes a mess on the lake, and then he goes home.
And we have one on Caspian as a summer resident who comes from Kansas, I believe, for a few weeks. And most of the time he doesn't use it.
Okay.
He uses it just as a regular water ski boat. So you can use it as a regular water ski boat. You don't have to use it as a wake boat as well.
Why would somebody choose to use it as a wake boat?
Well, I think it's, people like to surf. It's a sport, and people have fun. I know during the public meeting that we had in Greensboro about wake boats in February, there was a guy from Iroquois Lake, and I read his testimony, and he said, well, it gives my kids, especially my young daughters, like a lot of confidence. It's just like this is confidence building for them. And so, I mean, people like to have fun in different ways.
Absolutely.
And it's, for me, we need to figure out how to get along and how to protect the environment, how to protect the safety of people.
Right.
And, and maybe it's okay to do this in some lakes, bigger lakes that have more room for everybody, but on Vermont smaller lakes, it's just really a challenge to protect the environment, protect the health and safety of people, and allow people to use the boats.
And at this point, I know they do have these boats on Lake Memphremagog. In fact, I had a sort of collision with one of them, which was my first experience of a wake boat. It was a rude awakening. That was a mighty powerful wave that hit us, and it was unexpected because we never saw the boat. The boat was long gone.
Yeah. And that raises the question, Pam.
Yeah.
As JoAnn said, it's fun to be surfing on. It's fun to surf on the ocean. It's fun to surf behind a boat. But when does my fun spoil everybody else's fun? And is that fair?
Right.
And how do we manage that as a society?
I'm an experienced kayaker, and I had a swimmer with me. And when we got hit, obviously we got tossed around some. Okay, we can survive that. But then it crashed into the shore, and we were near Eagle Point, which is a reserve. I thought, what if there were little kids here? Or little kids on paddleboards, or even big kids on paddleboards? That would have been quite a hit. I mean, a paddleboard is not a surfboard. And
we've had 3 public hearings on this rule so far, and we have a half a dozen testimonies from Vermonters whose children or grandchildren were injured.
Wow.
Mostly they get injured because they get banged by the waves into a dock or into a boat.
Or a rock.
So
we have lots of rocks out there.
We have lots of examples from Vermont lakes of the human safety dangers of these boats.
What about what it's doing to the environment?
Yeah, it's I mean, the biggest concerns are when those waves crash into the shore. They erode the bank and cause sediment to go into the water, and sediment has phosphorus. Right. And all of our lakes in Vermont are phosphorus challenged, meaning that the levels are increasing. And when you get too much phosphorus, you get blue-green algae blooms, and so it's a pollution. And so they're causing the sedimentation, and if they go into shallow water, like less than 20 feet deep, it actually stirs up the bottom sediment and releases phosphorus into the water.
Right. What does it do with invasive species? I mean, on this lake and in all the other lakes around here, we have a lot of invasives. I presume it's going to spread them.
Well, the way that they can produce that big wave is they take and they bring water into the back of the boat into a ballast tank. Makes the stern of the boat go down like this, so that it makes a big wave.
Yeah.
Those ballast tanks get filled with water, they go surfing,
And they take
and then
it
they
somewhere
empty it
else.
out. No, they empty it out, they go somewhere else. But they don't empty it completely. It can't
Right.
empty completely because the drain is not at the very
Sure.
bottom. So if they come to Lake Elmore, where we have Eurasian milfoil,
Mm-hmm.
and they pick up water from Lake Elmore, they surf there, they empty that out, but they empty all but 10 gallons.
Right.
Then they come to Caspian Lake, and they come
They
into
share.
Caspian Lake and Eurasian milfoil. As soon as they open that valve,
Right.
whoosh.
Right.
And what about Caspian? Do you have Eurasian milfoil?
We don't have milfoil, knock on wood.
I love
And-
your lake, by the way. It's so
Yeah, it
wonderful
is
to
beautiful.
swim in.
And the other thing is zebra mussels.
Yes.
You know, zebra mussels are pretty common in Lake Champlain.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, so the ruling that DEC is proposing has what they call a home lake rule, which is supposed to protect from the spread of invasives. Because if the ruling goes forward, each wake boat will have to designate their home lake. And so that means if they can stay on, let's say they designate Memphremagog, they'd have to be on Memphremagog the whole season. And if they wanted to go someplace on another lake, they would have to go to a decontamination station, get decontaminated, get a sticker, and then
Right.
they'd be allowed to go outside the lake. So there is a ruling, but again, a lot of the rulings that are being proposed right now have no
Enforcement.
exactly. And so, I mean, the ruling is just the first step. And the state already has a law that prohibits movement of transfer of ballast water, but it hasn't been enforced. And since
Right.
we've had this ruling, maybe 100 more lakes have gotten invasive species. And so it's really up to the individual lakes to have a greeter program and to enforce the rules.
Yeah,
and,
but when you
and
have
try
so
to
many
protect.
points on your lake where you can put a boat in, it's really hard to enforce.
Yeah, you're definitely. I mean, on Caspian, we only have one public landing.
Right.
And, you know, so to have a greeter program, it's, you know, it's easy, but we're not there 24/7.
Right.
And there's a lot of lakes in the NEK that have no greeter programs.
Exactly.
They're in remote. They don't even have electricity. You know, so it's
Yeah.
it's really a challenge. You know, it's what I found in being involved with this is that the community doesn't own the lake, but they have a lot of ownership in the lake. And it's not, it's just, there's so many programs. It's not just the greeter program, there's the lake monitoring.
Right.
We have, a lot of the lakes have these lake-wise programs where they're getting landowners to
Yep.
change the way they manage their property near the shore. We have, on Caspian right now, we have a lake watershed action plan that we're doing. So all
Right.
of this is community-driven and with community involvement and all volunteers, a lot of it's volunteer.
Right.
And so we're taking ownership in protecting our lake. And so we really want to have a say on what goes on in
Right.
the lake.
As do we on Memphremagog. We have all of those programs. And there are a lot of us who have been recruited and trained to participate
Yes.
in them. So anything that is going to disrupt that is really a challenge.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation in that the communities support their lake, but they
Yeah.
can't control what goes
Right.
on there. They can't control who comes in with invasive species. They can't control who comes in with a wake boat. The state controls that, which is why it's so important to get the state to pass a rule regulating wake boats, not banning them everywhere. Lake Champlain, there's plenty of room if you stay out in the middle. Maybe in the middle of Lake Memphremagog. Don't know. But
Right.
not in the smaller lakes and not close to shore.
And where is the process in terms of coming up with those rules or approving those rules? You've obviously got an idea of them in place, but where is the state in this?
Well, the group of lakes responsible wakes for Vermont lakes, we petitioned 2 years ago now, 2 years ago in March, petitioned the Agency of Natural Resources to come up with a rule. And we worked with them all along for a year and a half. Finally, they said, okay, we're going to propose a rule. They proposed a rule at 500 feet from shore, 20 feet deep, which I call a sponge cake rule. Right. It's not going to have much effect. As soon as you throw it in the water, it's not far enough.
Yeah.
The Canadians on Lake Memphremagog want 820 feet from shore. So we should be closer to that.
Absolutely.
We petitioned for 1,000 feet. The petition's been going through the process for 2 years. It's about to be introduced formally through the Secretary of State. However, it's not strong enough. It's only 500 feet from shore. That's not enough.
No.
So we are pushing with all of our political might to get Vermonters to realize it's better to have a stronger rule for many, many reasons. Environmental reasons, human safety reasons, enjoyment of our lakes by anglers, by kayakers, by swimmers.
Right.
These will all be affected. If you take on a small lake like Elmore or even Caspian, one wake boat going back and forth on a Saturday afternoon turns the lake into a washing machine.
Right.
And precludes everybody else from using it that day. That's just not fair.
No, it's not.
So we need the state to intervene, which they are. The Department of Environmental Conservation has done an excellent job in crafting the rule and working with us, but there seems to be some, as they would say, political interference from upstairs.
I can imagine.
And that's what we're fighting right now.
It's amazing how many groups and lake-based issues get to the point where it's important for DEC and ANR to do exactly what they're mandated to do, which is respect, protect, and enjoy the water. And somehow that doesn't happen. How do we get them pushed to the next stage? We on Memphremagog are fighting a landfill that wants to discharge into the lake. Same issues, pollution for everybody. How do we get that next step?
It's called democracy. We gather the people, we the people, to make their wishes known through the governmental process. And if we get enough people to do that, we will succeed in managing our environment. We've done this before. In 1968, we did away with billboards because they were so ugly in our environment.
We still have one. We have the only one in the state,
How did
in
you
Coventry.
keep that?
Because, well, it's a long story, but we still have that one billboard, and it's in Coventry, and if you go back that way, you'll see it. And the story behind it is to the effect of too many people had $1 ownership in it that the state couldn't catch them. So,
well,
the rebels live here.
The people did rise up in 1968 to get rid of billboards. We rose up again to get rid of terrible, unplanned development in the Burlington area with Act 250. We did it again with jet skis not that long ago on our lakes. Well, we think we can do it again. We have even more support now than I think they had back then. And plenty of good Vermonters who don't want to see our lakes spoiled.
Right, and I think a lot of the issue is that people just don't know.
That's right.
They have no idea, and if they're not regular users, experiencers of the lake, how will they even know?
Well, they don't, and I mean, our experience in our community, especially after we had the last public hearing was held in Greensboro. And all of a sudden, all of these people who never heard of wake boats before, and now they see the terrible impact that they can have on the environment if they aren't used correctly or in the wrong places. And all of a sudden, these people are crazed. It's kind of like, what can we do? We need to do something. We feel so helpless.
That's great.
It is. It's great. And it's really I think every time, every opportunity we get out to speak about this, it gets more people educated and aware of the issue. And, you know, I think we're in a good spot because right now there's less than 200 wake boats licensed in Vermont. And so, you know, we need to start regulating them now before they become really popular and there gets to be a strong opposition, you know, against us and for wake boats. So I think it's a good time. It's a good time to put a lot of effort in.
Certainly sounds like a good issue to engage parents. They spend a lot of money to come and vacation on a lakeside.
That's right.
They really don't want their small person tossed in the air and dropped on a rock.
We have 4 granddaughters
Right.
who come with us to Lake Elmore.
Sure.
And we go there because it's a nice, peaceful lake, and we can feel that they're safe in the water. They go off by themselves.
Right.
They go off in their little kayaks. We let them go anywhere they want.
Of course.
We wouldn't be able to do that if there were wake boats operating
Right.
on Lake Elmore.
Yeah. That's a real issue.
Mm-hmm.
What is the impact on drinking water? I mean, a lot of lakeside communities drink from their lakes. Memphremagog, the Canadian side, the Quebec side, is a reservoir for Sherbrooke. 175,000 people are drinking from that lake.
Well, I can tell you
What is the impact?
on Lake Elmore, we get our water from the lake. We have a
Right.
pipe that runs down from our little camp into the,
Yeah.
down under the dock into the lake. When the jet ski, we have a neighbor with a jet ski, when he goes back and forth, it's very shallow.
Yeah.
Out front of our lake, 3 or 4 feet deep. When he goes back and forth, our water gets cloudy.
Right.
And a cloudy lake is not a safe lake, and it's not an attractive lake. People don't want to recreate
Right.
on a cloudy lake.
And there's certainly lakes in Vermont that are, quote, lakes in crisis. That one piece of legislation which was put in place to benefit one specific lake. Cleaning out that lake is still an ongoing process, as it will be for all of our lakes, because all of our lakes are lakes in crisis.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, there's a lot of money, and this isn't just Vermont, it's everywhere.
Yes.
It's like when there's a crisis, you spend money,
Yes.
but you don't spend any money on prevention.
Isn't that amazing?
It's amazing.
It
And
goes
would
with
be
health as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of crazy.
Yeah.
As a society that
We don't front load anything.
No, we don't. It's kind of like let's invest
Yeah.
before we have a problem.
We knew 40 years ago that putting phosphate fertilizer on our farms would seep down into the rivers
Right.
and streams and into the lakes and cause the growth of algae.
Yeah.
Scientists knew this
Right.
40, 50 years ago. Europe at that time banned the use of these fertilizers. We didn't. In Vermont, we had the chance to. We did not pass the legislation,
Right.
which is why Lake Carmi
It's
and
the mess
much
it's in.
of Lake Champlain at the mouth of the river is totally useless for
Right.
drinking, for kayaking, for
swimming.
So we knew this, and we didn't do anything. We know now that wake boats cause damage to the environment and to the other users.
Right.
Now is the time to do something about it.
Yes. Common sense.
An ounce of
I
prevention.
haven't noticed common sense working real well, though.
Well, it will.
Unfortunately.
We're confident that the people of Vermont will not let this be squashed by certain political actors.
What would be helpful? I mean, what would you like people watching this show? This goes out on community access TV, and it goes wherever any of us send the video, because it's also on YouTube. So that's potentially a lot of people. What would be the concrete action that you would like from people?
Well, I think one thing that we've heard from DEC is the safety issues, and
Yeah.
we have a lot of anecdotal evidence, but they want concrete evidence. So if you have an interaction with a wake boat, report it to the local police,
Right.
or to some enforcement agency, so now there's a record of it.
Yes.
And so if we start accumulating all these records, public records, not just anecdotal evidence.
Right.
I think that they'll have some concrete data to say, yes, we have a safety problem, and these are the issues that we have with safety. But without, reports and to the state police or to your local enforcement agency. So I think that's one thing people can do right now. The other thing is if you live on the lake, be diligent.
Right.
And if you see somebody operating, I know it's kind of like approaching somebody with a firearm or something.
Yeah.
But I mean,
excuse me.
But I mean, don't be shy.
Right.
Maybe go to the landing and approach them there. But I mean, we really have to be our own best resource for enforcement, because we aren't going to get help. So, be diligent on your lake about what's happening. Report any incidences to the authorities, and I think that's something people can do right now.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that surprised me the most was I never saw the boat. And I see boats. I mean, I see a lot of boats, small boats, because I'm watching for them. It's what you do as an escort kayaker. But I never saw this.
Because he could have been 1,000 feet away.
That's right.
And his wake will
And
still
going
have
fast.
power.
Yes, it did.
And so you're 1,000 feet this way. By the time that wake hits you, he's another 1,000 feet down the lake, out of your sight.
No clue.
These people don't understand how these wakes dissipate.
Right.
It take a long time to do it.
Exactly.
To answer your question another way, if you're living on a lake and you're a member of the Lake Association, or even if you're not a member, get the Lake Association to endorse the proposal that we've made to the agency. Get them to say, yes, we support what the Responsible Wakes group is doing.
And I presume as a group you're working with the lake organizations, because pretty much every lake in Vermont, as far as I know, and in Canada, has organizations.
That's right. We have there are 73 lakes on which wake boats are currently allowed to operate. We have lake associations on about 46 of those 73. There's a few very small ones that don't have enough camps to have a lake association. We're gathering right now the endorsements from as many of those as we can. So encourage your lake association to endorse this.
Are you working with Lake Memphremagog Association, Memphremagog Watershed Association?
They're on our list. I don't know if we have their endorsement. So if you know who we can talk to while we're here in Newport, we'll do so. The other thing that you can do is report your story. If you have a lake wake story, report it, like you did, Pam. You told us about your incident with the wake boat while the swimmer was out. That's exactly what we need, and we're gathering those. We have dozens of wake boat stories that are in writing as good testimony. Send them to us. We have a website. We have a web address. You can send that material to us, and we'll keep it safe, and we'll protect your name if you don't want people to know who you are.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, because the only reason that I wrote that was because I'd got an email from you guys asking for stories. And I thought, but that had been the previous year, and it had never occurred to me. I talked to a couple of people about this is what happened today. That was really weird.
No, it's been good. In fact, our raising this issue in the state has caused a lot of these lake folks and paddlers and anglers to rise up and realize that this is the case. We had on Joe's Pond, for instance, all of a sudden the Joe's Pond Association woke up, and we've got 12 eyewitness testimonies of damage caused by wake boats on Joe's Pond. The Joe's Pond Association took a poll of their members. Do we want to ban wake boats on our lake? 75 to 25. They're waking up. They're realizing they have some power, and we need to exercise
We have a big fishing community in Vermont. I mean, it's one of the states where fishing is still a real sport, with a lot of followers. I cannot imagine that they're really supporting wake boats.
No, in fact, we have Trout Unlimited,
Yeah.
and there's another fishing group, and Peter Shea, who is Mr. Vermont Fishing,
Yeah.
published many books. they're all with us on our side. They've
Sure.
written letters to the editor. They're part of our group that is trying to get this thing through. Because imagine a little flat-bottomed fishing boat
Oh, I can.
out in,
Quite
out
easily.
in Lake Memphremagog, near the
Right.
shore or out in the middle, and a 4-foot wave comes by.
Right.
You haven't got a chance.
Well, that was my experience in a kayak.
Right.
But yeah, it's really significant, and particularly as we move into summer and all the kids' camps, I would imagine that there
Yeah.
are a lot of interested people there.
On Lake Fairleigh has 5 or 6 children's camps.
Yes.
They've been there for more than 100 years. And most of them are owned by the Aloha nonprofit
Right.
association that brings kids. These aren't camps for rich kids. These
Right.
are camps that bring in urban students and everybody else. And they run a sailing program with little tiny sailboats.
Right.
They run a kayaking program, a canoeing program, swimming program. They're among our strongest supporters.
Right. Our rec department here in the city has a camp right on the shore.
Yes.
I have no idea. Are they involved?
I don't know about the Newport Rec Department, but it would seem to me that a wake boat operating near shore
Yes.
would not be a good thing if you have a bunch of little
Nope.
children out there just learning to sail.
Right.
We used to sail, we used to have a camp on in Rhode Island on the Sakonnet River.
Right.
And they ran a sailing camp for kids, a recreation camp. And a wake boat came through one day and just all these little kids in these little Optimus sailboats, right through. And you could see they had to send her the...
Scuttles them all.
Pretty much,
Yeah.
pretty much. It's a sad operation.
Well, the other thing it does is, I mean, it's not just like if you're swimming or kayaking, you know, even at 500 feet or 1,000 feet safety zone is what they're calling it.
Yeah.
I mean, it pretty much says you can't use the other parts of the lake.
Right.
So, like, if you wanted to swim across the lake or if you
And
wanted
we
to
do.
sail across the lake,
We
it's
do.
sort of, it doesn't look
Right.
at that. So now all of like the silent sport activities are being pushed. You know, this is your spot. You know,
Yeah.
you have to be close to the shore.
Yeah, 20,000 kayaks around the edge of the lake with one wake boat going back and
Right.
forth and taking up the whole
I mean,
lake.
Kingdom Games, which is a big deal up here, there are swims in the summer every week, big swims, I mean, marathon swimmers going around the islands and back down through Derby Bay. There's a real risk of a major impact
Yes.
there.
Definitely.
I would bet that there are certainly ways to get attention from all of the other groups that have never considered this up until now.
Yes. And we're working on that
Yeah, I'm
with,
sure.
with everybody that we can and reaching out. I'm going to go tonight to Paddlers Film Night at Outdoor Gear Exchange in Burlington.
Cool.
Where they're going to show films. Can't think of anything more exciting. Films about paddling. But I expect that there will be dozens of paddlers there.
Yes.
And we're going to bring our literature and our cartoons and our business cards and see if we can't get them on our side.
I would be very surprised if they weren't interested.
So we'll work with any group that's interested in the quality of our lakes.
And that applies to the Canadian groups too?
Well, right now we're concentrating on Vermont. Vermont DEC can't make rules about Canadian lakes.
True. But Champlain and Memphremagog are international lakes.
Correct.
So if you've got somebody zooming up and down on our... nobody's going to be zooming up and down on our 5-mile pond, which
Right.
is really what we have. They're all flying across the border back
Exactly.
and forth.
And the Canadians, as you know, have
Right.
regulated this much better than we have.
Right.
They haven't been afraid to keep the wake boats, as I said, 820 feet from shore. And we need to do at least as well as they
If
do.
the one that I experienced was 820 feet from shore, that was still mighty
But he
rough
was in
when
the
it hit
middle of
us.
it.
Right,
Yeah, there are many people in Vermont who would like to ban these boats completely.
right.
But we were told early on that you'll never get that through. You'll never get that through. And there's a good point in that there are many places on Lake Champlain where doing your wake surfing
Yeah.
wouldn't bother anybody.
True.
It's big enough. your
I'm not
wake,
sure that
you have
that's true
plenty
on
of time for your
Montenegro.
wake to dissipate. So it's a hard one to do.
Yeah, I mean, that's a much broader lake than Memphremagog, which is sort of long and narrow.
Champlain is 287,000 acres.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a huge lake. In fact, an interesting way to look at it is that Vermont has about 318,000 acres of lake currently open to wake boats.
Yeah.
All we're asking is that 14,000 of those 318,000 be protected from the wake boats. 4%,
reasonable.
4% of the
Yeah.
lake area for the 20,000 kayakers
Yeah.
and swimmers, and let the wake boats go where they
Right.
can operate safely.
And those of us who very firmly believe that everybody should learn how to swim, we don't have many pools, swimming pools
No.
in Vermont. What we do have are lakes, and kids who are exposed to lakes. It's really important, in my world, for kids to learn to swim. This is something that could harm
Yeah.
that swimming ability
Yeah.
permanently.
Do you see swimmers on Caspian
Yeah,
Lake?
we have.
Oh, yes.
We have long distance swimmers,
I
and we
know.
also have a swimming program for the kids.
Yes.
At the public beach every
Yeah.
summer. The other thing I want to mention are the loons, and we do have a situation with the loons because they nest
Right on
either
the shore.
right on the shore, and
Right.
it doesn't take much of a wave to wipe
Scuttle
out
them, right.
a loon nest. And
That would be terrible.
yeah, I mean, the problem with, it's devastating impact. It's
Yeah.
not like, you have the shoreline erosion, you have the bottom erosion, you have the loon impacts, and all of these are really big impacts.
Right.
And they're not, it's not like you can fix it
No.
easily. I mean, if a loon loses its nest, it loses its productivity for
Yeah.
a whole year. So it's, the scale of the impact, from these boats are pretty big.
Right.
Yeah, the Vermont's loon expert, his name is Eric Hansen.
Yeah, we know him.
He testified at one
Sure.
of the public hearings and said, you need to go to 1,000 feet from shore
Right.
to help protect the loons.
Oh, I
In
hope
fact,
the state is listening.
the loons can be damaged, as you mentioned, by a wake, but they're also spooked by these big,
Of
loud
course.
boats going by. This is not something that they grew up, they didn't evolve to
Right.
coexist with this kind of a gigantic machine. So it'll spook them as well as drown their eggs.
Right. And on that note, we are out of time. I'm so glad you both came in. And I want us to continue this conversation at some point in the future. And meanwhile, we'll see what we can do from this end to really help this movement grow.
Thank you for inviting us.
Water is
Thank
for
you.
everybody, and it's our scarcest resource on the planet.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.